This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, I'm just going to check to make sure all council members are on. Karen, I see you. Ike, you're on the call.
Yes, I am.
Tina, you.
Here.
Colleen, you're on.
Yes.
Okay, Jane, you're on. Anita, I see you. Bob, are you on?
I got your prayer. There's something on my phone when the answering service. I don't know how they did it. Somebody's hacked my phone and they on the answering machine. Can you hear me?
Bob Stokely, are you on? Yaniv, you're on. I see you. Give Bob a second.
Okay.
Hi, Ed. How are you?
Hi, Stephanie. I'm good. How are you?
Great. Thanks for jumping on.
No problem.
We have Bob Stokely yet?
I'm here.
Okay, great. All right, Colleen, we are ready to go.
Okay. By the authority vested in me, I hereby declare this meeting of the Conshohocken Borough Council duly open and ready to conduct any business that may come before it. Ms. Checo, if you'll do roll call.
Councilmember Tatino.
Present.
Councilmember Griffin.
Here.
Vice President Sokolowski.
Here.
Councilmember Flanagan.
Here.
Councilmember Barton.
Here.
Councilmember Stokely.
Here.
President Leonard.
Here.
Mayor Aronson.
Here.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Vice President Sokolowski, if you could do prayer for council, please.
Sure can, thank you. O divine master, in deep humility, we place ourselves, our thoughts, and our plans in thy hands. We beg thee to fill our minds and our wills with the gifts of wisdom, understanding, counsel, fortitude, knowledge, and piety. Help us not to think of self or personal desires, but rather consider the responsibilities laid upon us. Help us promote as far as possible the welfare of our people and to treat them with impartiality and justice. Grant us the power to set a good example in thought, word, and deed, so that thy blessings will be showered upon us and the people that we represent. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Council, if we could do Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag.
to the flag of the United States of America and to
the
the
republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under
under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So thank you for joining us for our regularly scheduled public voting session. At this time, please mute your audio lines. No public comments will be permitted during the course of the meeting until the designated public comment section located on the agenda. You will be notified during the meeting when public comments are permitted. You may also submit written comments via email to brogers@conshahockenpa.gov. A member of the Borough Administration will read public comments submitted in this manner. For all comments, please include
It sounds like we may have lost President Leonard, so for all comments, please include your name and address for the record. And we would like to thank you in advance for your cooperation during the remote meeting. So I'll just note for the record that prior to the voting session, council held an executive session on legal and property matters. So the first item on the agenda is land use matters, public hearings, and ordinances. And the public hearing is specifically on the SP4 district, the sign standards ordinance amendment. So Mr. Peters, I will turn it over to you to open the hearing and explain the amendment.
Thank you, Ms. Checo. Ed, are you good to go? I see your tiny little.
I'm ready.
This is the scheduled date and time for a hearing on the ordinance titled an ordinance of the Borough of Conshohocken, Montgomery County, Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, amending the Code of Ordinances of the Borough of Conshohocken, Chapter 27 zoning, Part 22 SP4 Specially Planned District 4 by amending the sign regulations for the district, repealing prior ordinances or parts of ordinances, providing a savings clause, and setting an effective date. Before we get started into the substance, I have 5 exhibits to mark. Exhibit B1 will be the ordinance under consideration. Exhibit B2 is the proof of publication. This hearing was advertised on March 1 and March 8th, 2020 in the Times Herald and Times Herald Digital. Exhibit B3 is the recommendation of the Montgomery County Planning Commission. Exhibit B4 is the recommendation of the Borough Planning Commission. And Exhibit B5 is a schematic example of what signage would look like under the provisions of this ordinance. Council has discussed this ordinance several times over the last 3 months. You have discussed it at your work session multiple times. Your Planning Commission has also considered it, and it is now before you for adoption if you so choose. The ordinance in brief, the beginning of the ordinance, sections A through E, all of those sections simply repeat the prior provisions of the SP4 sign regulations. The new regulations kick in at subsection F, and those new regulations provide that if a building is 180 feet in height or more, and there is one principal user that takes up 95% of the building or more, they can have greater signage than permitted for other buildings within the SP4 district. Most importantly, there is a sign permitted of 500 square feet in size, provided that no individual letter, image, character, or graphic is greater than 75 inches in height or in width. And the requirement and the justification for that larger sign is that the sign be located more than 150 feet above average grade. Other than that, the additional signage that is permitted only applies if a building is on a corner lot. If a building is on a corner lot, it can have up to 2 additional signs of 150 square feet in height with the same 75-inch size limitations for characters. Your Borough Planning Commission, when I reviewed this with them, had a great suggestion that we add in a better definition or explanation of how to determine whether or not 95% of a building is allocated to a single user. There's now a subsection that clarifies that allocation can include common areas, provided that single principal user is responsible for 95% of the rights and responsibilities for those common areas, such as common area maintenance charges. The last section of the ordinance provides that if 95% of the building is no longer allocated to a single principal user, the signage permitted by this subsection must be removed. You saw a representative example several times of what this signage will look like. Again, it's for taller buildings and for signage located at the top of the buildings. With that, those are the pertinent provisions of the ordinance. Are there any questions from members of Borough Council?
I have no questions.
I have no questions.
Thank you very much. And again, go ahead. I'm sorry, please.
No, I was just going to say I have no questions either, Mike.
Thank you very much, President. With that, are there any members of the public this evening that have a comment only related to this matter? So we're in a public hearing, which means the stenographer is active. Are there any comments regarding this zoning ordinance that's before the Borough Council? Let the record reflect that there are no public comments. Borough Council, at this time, the hearing in this matter can be closed, and it is now up to you for a vote. The vote would be, if you're so inclined, to approve the ordinance amendment as drafted, and it is the ordinance amendment that was uploaded to your packets and also the ordinance amendment we discussed at your work session previously.
I'll make that motion to approve. Anita?
I'll second it. Griffin.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
And I know you all know us by now, but that was Anita Barton that made the motion for the transcript. Ed, with that, we thank you very much and we'll excuse you for this evening. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Peters.
You're welcome, President Leonard.
The next item on the agenda is consider authorizing advertisement of an amendment to the accessory structure section of the zoning ordinance. Ms. Checco, I'll send that over to you.
Thank you, President Leonard. So as previously discussed in your work session, we were looking at the accessory structure to the zoning ordinance and expanding it. So as everyone knows, we are attempting to expand the size of a permitted garage so that a resident, should they want to expand upon the size of their garage, does not have to go through the zoning process in order to do so. So this would now approve an accessory structure for a garage at 450 square feet. So this has been vetted through your professionals. It is in sync with what we've heard from the residents as well in terms of the process. So the next step in considering amending the accessory structure to the section of the zoning ordinance is to authorize it for advertisement. So in front of you, if you're so inclined, is the motion to authorize advertisement for the amendment. And then that would continue to go through the process and be back in front of you for approval at a later date.
So do we have a motion from council?
I'll make that motion, Bob Stokely.
And I'll
Second.
second Jane Flanagan.
All in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the, thank you, Ms. Checco.
Welcome.
The next item on the agenda is under presentations. It's the Sewer Authority Sale Exploratory Process, the presentation on bid results. Scott Schuler from PFM will lead the discussion on that. So if he would like to start, that would be appreciated.
Very good. Well, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Again, Scott Shear with PFM. Also with me is Garrett Moore and also Tom Wyatt, special counsel to the borough from Overmeyer, is also on as well to participate in this. So this evening, we just plan on going through a presentation to give an update on the exploration process that's been going on for about 2 years, kind of starting with the valuation and then going through kind of a long and thorough process that ultimately led to sending out an RFP and receiving responses back just about a month or so ago. So this evening is just to kind of recap the set of events that have occurred over time. So with that, if you could turn to the first page, please. So starting back in 2019, when we became involved, and I think prior to that as well, the borough set out some goals in advance of this process. And we just kind of wanted to go through some of these goals for everyone here this evening. So first off was to study and evaluate all the options of funding sources available to the borough, such as selling a borough asset. Determine the financial benefits and opportunities available from a potential sale of the sewer authority, which is a borough asset. In doing so, if it came to fruition, keeping utility rates reasonable while ensuring prudent investment in system infrastructure. And then the fourth point, generate significant upfront proceeds to be used for borough purposes to offset other expenses or liabilities. And kind of in conjunction with that would be to help alleviate the borough's debt capacity restrictions by state law. They are governed as how much debt is outstanding, so that would all play into kind of all part and parcel with the analysis. And these goals will continue to be discussed here throughout the process. Next slide, please. So kind of a summary of the key events, and this is a kind of a very high level set of events, and then we'll start drilling down into a little bit more detail. But first off, back in kind of the middle part of early 2019, expert outside engineering, financial, and legal counsel were brought on board to provide an objective assessment to the borough. Then later in the process, potential buyers or investors were solicited with a request for qualifications based on industry established criteria for the possible execution of an asset purchase agreement. After kind of a lot of disclosure, a lot of due diligence, and a thorough vetting, 3 bidders remained basically through the end of 2020. Then a request for bid was released, and those responses were due February 12th. And again, we're going to be reviewing those responses this evening. So again, kind of a high-level overview, and then a little bit more detail on the timeline. So again, on the left-hand side, starting back in the spring of 2019, we were first brought on board to do a limited scope valuation of the assets to kind of get a general idea of what the system may be valued at. In July of that year, we then presented that valuation to council. Later in 2019, in the fall, we were authorized to continue the exploration process through what's called phase 2. That's when we would then send out the RFQ to a lot of different potential investors and potential buyers to see if they're interested. Then in early February of 2020, we held various meetings with some of the interested parties that submitted responses to the RFQ. A lot of additional due diligence occurred then in February. And then there in the middle of the timeline, kind of in March, the borough had paused on the exploration process. Obviously, there was a lot of other things going on at the time that the attention needed to be directed towards that. So we kind of took a few months off. And then towards the fall then of last year, the borough reinitiated the process, and we kind of held the calls with the remaining bidders at that time to kind of get things ramped back up again. And then November of 2020 through January of this year, the finance team continued the due diligence and creating the asset purchase agreement and the request for bids. And then ultimately through board approval, released the RFP in January of this year. And again, mid-February is when we received the responses. So again, that just gives us a little bit more detail going back to the beginning of the process. Next slide, please. So some of the highlights of the request for bid. So the RFP, kind of the overall bid package, and we'll get into a little bit more detail on that. Again, that was sent to the shortlisted bidders, and there were 3 of them on January 21st of this year. Gave the bidders about a month to respond. Those 3 parties that were involved still were Aqua, Pennsylvania American, and Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority. So they were the ones that received the overall RFP package. The packages that they received the bid on was basically comprised of sort of 2 main documents. Number 1 was the RFP itself, or the request for bid, and then the second was the asset purchase agreement, where you'll hear it called the APA, and then there's related schedules and exhibits to that APA. First, the RFP itself, that component of the bid package, that's basically just a document that includes the various bidding forms, kind of defines the term of how to submit the bid and how the bid would be awarded and the time of the bid consideration, and kind of a lot of other provisions. For example, one of the provisions was that the bid would remain valid through May 15th of this year. So that was the RFP itself. Again, that's kind of the logistical document. Then the asset purchase agreement and its related exhibits and schedules, that basically defines all the business and legal provisions of the potential transaction. As kind of part of the due diligence process, the borough had asked for a couple different options. One was assuming a 3-year rate freeze. So rates would remain constant with where they are right now for 3 years after closing. And then another option with a no rate freeze scenario to give them a few extra data points to look at. In addition to obviously the purchase price, the bidders were also asked to provide indicative, non-binding sewer rates out for basically about 10 years, again, to give the borough and the other stakeholders enough information to be able to make a decision one way or another. So again, this was looking at both the purchase price and the rates. Next slide, please. So now we're going to get into just 3 different slides of the actual results of the bidding process. So page 6 here highlights some of the key items regarding the Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority proposal. So for the 3-year rate option, three-year rate freeze option, the bid price was $52 million. Monthly rates are shown below. They would stay constant for basically 3 years, and then they would go to $47 and change, which is basically the rate that all of Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority retail customers are charged. For the no rate freeze option right below there, the bid price was $55 million. And again, you see the monthly rates right below there. In addition, Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority does have a tap fee that's a little over $6,000 that we also included on this information page as well. So again, this gives you the highlight of the Bucks bid, 3-year rate freeze option, $52 million, the no rate freeze option, $55 million. Next slide, please. Page 7 highlights the bid from Aqua. So for the 3-year, we'll call it the 3-year guaranteed rate freeze option, Aqua did not bid on that. However, they did bid on the no rate freeze option, and that had a purchase price of $42.25 million. Again, you see the monthly rates below there broken out for both the Borough of Conshohocken residents as well as West Conshohocken residents. And then we have a little additional information about their tap fees and other connection fees below there as well, that they do not have technically a tap fee or reservation fee per their tariff, but there are some other potential connection fees that could be incurred. Aqua would cover the first, say, $12,000 of cost to connect for existing customers, and anything over that would be borne by the customer. More than likely, given the density within Conshohocken, any cost to connect would not go above that $12,000 more than likely. So again, just a little bit more information on the Aqua proposal. Then page 8 highlights the bid from Pennsylvania American Water. And again, up at the top here for the 3-year rate freeze option, they did not bid on that. However, for the no rate freeze option, purchase price of $30 million. And again, you see the monthly rates below there and their respective tap fees and other connection fees below there as well. Next slide, please. So as far as if this continues to move forward, we saw the bid proposal, and the highest bid did come from Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority. So in this example here, for the estimated sources and uses of the proceeds, we're assuming, again, the $52 million option, which reflected the 3-year rate freeze. So this is kind of at a very high level. There's a lot more detail to flesh out if this continues to move forward between now and closing, if that would occur. But it just kind of gives us a little bit of a hand on what net proceeds would be available for use after closing. So on the left-hand side, we're starting with a purchase price of $52 million. There may be some sewer cash on hand at closing. We're assuming zero for the moment. So we're starting with $52 million of sources. Over on the right-hand side, under uses, there would need to be some existing debt of the system paid off, and that's about $10.7 million. There'd be some other transaction fees and contingency and some other pension-related items of about $1.5 million that would be set aside, and potentially there could be some money set aside for some easements that may need to be secured, possibly after closing, and so we're assuming about $1.2 million for that. So the day of closing, about $13.4 million would be set aside, and that would leave then down at the bottom of this page just about $38.6 million available for the borough to then redeploy. If we just spend a page or a few pages, a little bit more about Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority, since they submitted the highest proposal. We just, again, wanted to give the audience a little bit of background about this municipal authority. The authority was created, so this again is a municipal authority. It is not regulated by the PUC. It's governed under the Municipal Authorities Act. The authority was created in 1962 by the Bucks County Board of Commissioners. The term of that authority expires currently in 2048. The authority board consists of 5 board members appointed by Bucks County Board of Commissioners. Each member has to be a resident of the county and may serve for a term of 5 years. The terms of the members are staggered so that the term of one member expires each year. And none of the members of the authority board is also a member of the Board of Commissioners of the county. That's a little bit of background on the board itself. Kind of the customers that it serves and the employee count. The authority has about 115 or more employees serving over 90,000 retail water and sewer customers in their territory. And that comes out to be about a population that they serve of about half a million. The authority does have a good relationship with its various unions. New contracts were recently entered into with both of the bargaining units. Next slide, please. So all the bidders had to do their own analyses on potential future capital needs of the system, and so we just wanted to hone in a little bit more into Bucks County assumptions for their proposal. Where number one, just like all the utilities out there, the authority prides itself in the reinvestment into the infrastructure on a continuous basis. So it's constantly updating its system to make sure it stays in good state of good repair. The authority conducts monthly meetings to discuss and plan for various capital needs, and they always are looking out long term. Basically, they have a 10-year strategic plan. And again, that strategic plan is updated many times throughout the year to make sure that it's taken into account all the most up-to-date information. The third point, the authority had evaluated the maintenance and capital improvements in the Conshohocken system, and they did include all the necessary work into their 10-year strategic plan. Basically the bottom point there, initially they identified about 600,000 of capital needs for the system, and that's just basically in the first year or two, and then they have some other needs built in later in the model, but that was for some metering and some SCADA and security improvements. But overall, they did not see any kind of significant capital needs in the very, very short term. But again, they did embed the Conshohocken system in their overall 10-year capital plan, but identified about 600,000 kind of right out of the gates for the first year or two. Next slide, please. So this just gives you an idea of their service territory, kind of broken out. You see more on the right-hand side, that's more of the Bucks County, and then a little bit in the Montgomery County and the Chester County areas. Get, again, a sense of who they serve here in the nearby region. Next slide, please. As far as the use of proceeds, so again, if this continues to move forward, and from one of the prior slides, we were assuming a net proceeds amount of about 38.6 million. How could that money be redeployed in the borough? Nothing obviously fine-tuned at the moment, but at a high level, the borough's looking at various infrastructure projects, general fund reserves, maybe some pension, and some other post-employment benefit funding, and also additional debt reduction as well. So again, those are kind of at a high level the various potential uses to benefit the residents. And then on page 14, just kind of gives us a high level timeline of potential closing if it continues to move forward, assuming it would move forward with Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority. So we updated the council earlier this month with the results, and here we are this evening on March 17th for the public presentation. maybe some additional public presentations during the March and April timeframe, and then potentially in April or May, council will consider the ordinance for the sale of the sewer system. Potentially late spring, Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority would begin the process of getting their documents together to go out and issue the debt that they need to fund this, and then closing would occur sometime, say, in summer of 2021. And then lastly, on page 15, just to kind of wrap up, again, kind of going back to one of the first pages with the goals, the borough began this process of exploring to determine the potential benefits that the residents could experience from the sale of the system, with the $52 million purchase price being offered from Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority. Funds will obviously be available for the borough to accomplish many of its goals. If sold to Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority, the borough system would still be owned and operated by a local municipal authority. And as I mentioned before, it is not a private, business regulated by the PUC. The key components of the sale, just kind of highlight a couple of them here. The system will be sold to an experienced operator. Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority has been around for a while, has a good reputation serving their clients. Near-term future rates are expected to remain very reasonable, and the upfront proceeds will be used to benefit the residents of the borough over the long term. So with that wraps up our presentation this evening, highlighting the overall bid process and the results that we received.
Could I ask a question? It's Tina Sokolowski.
Sure.
I'm not sure in the process that you did, was the question asked, or if we move forward, what would be interesting to know is if anyone who is part of Bucks County Water Authority has asked before if any of the communities that are involved in it could have a seat, even not if it's a voting seat or not voting seat. I'm not sure if that was asked and answered before, but it would be something that would be probably, and we would want to know.
Sure. No, good question. Tom Wyatt, do you maybe want to try to tackle that? I mean, we can definitely get you a clear answer, but Tom, do you have any initial thoughts?
Yeah, I think their charter requires that anybody on the board to live in the county. But the better answer to your question is, in years of getting to know Bucks as operators, something we could take back to them as a discussion of how would we as Conshohocken get periodic reports or have periodic meetings with management or structure communications so that you all feel comfortable that you're getting the knowledge of what they're up to. We could look into things like that if that is helpful or interesting.
Yeah, that would be great. Also, would you mind going back to the slide that shows the Bucks County water rates, just that slide?
Sure. That would be slide 6. So for the 3-year rate freeze option up at the top for the $52 million option, so the first 3 years, 2022, 23, and 24, we're showing as the current rates, and then they would go to $47.20. And these are not set in stone rates. These are indicative rates that, again, we asked all the bidders to supply. This is Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority. This is what their model is currently generating based on kind of all their assumptions and all their inputs. So I don't want anyone to think this is set in stone. This is their most reasonable expectation going forward. And that rate, $47, would match all of their other retail wastewater customers that they serve.
And you said they do not use a PUC model. They use an internal model to determine rates?
Correct. They are not regulated by the PUC. They kind of set rates internally through their management, and then their board would need to sign off on the rates. But so as a municipal.
Did we lose them?
Maybe.
Thank you. Yeah, we can hear you.
Did you hear that response?
Just can you say it again, Scott? Sorry.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority, they are not governed by the PUC. They are governed by the Municipal Authorities Act, as all other Pennsylvania municipal authorities here across the state. So basically, the way they set rates is internal management kind of establishes the rate through their modeling and their various assumptions, and then they would take their rate request, their rate increase request, to their board, to the Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority board, to approve the rates. So again, no PUC involvement here.
Okay, and I have one final question, and then I'll let somebody else have a turn. So one question would be, we're seeing a rate of 47.20 across the board. Would that rate be the same for every community, or do we know if there's variations of rates, whether you live in Springfield or Conshohocken or any of the other municipalities that they serve?
Yeah, that would be across the board. So they practice, and Tom, Tom White, if you want to add, feel free to. They practice sort of very strict uniformity across the board with their rates. So that $47.20 is what they're projecting for all of their retail wastewater customers across their whole service territory. So that would include all the various municipalities that they serve.
Yeah, that's right. The Municipality Authorities Act requires that the rates they charge be uniform and reasonable. It does permit them to create different districts based upon different circumstances. But Scott's right. Bucks County is very disciplined. They like to charge the same rate to everybody in their entire footprint, and they infrequently raise rates.
Thank you.
Sure.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else on council have any questions for Scott?
I don't.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Tom. Thank you for all the information.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great presentation.
Okay.
Okay. So with that,
I think at this point, if council would agree with it, I'd like to make the motion to remove Aqua and PAWC, the Pennsylvania Water Company, from the process.
I'd second that.
And I'd like to continue the discussions about PA, Aqua and Water, or I'm sorry, Bucks County.
correct.
So it sounds like
Do
there's a
we have a motion?
I'll second that motion. Ike Griffin.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries.
Okay.
Go ahead, Tina.
So I guess I just want to clarify at this point for everyone on the call that the results of the bids were just presented. Council just made a motion to remove Aqua and Pennsylvania American Water Company from the sale process. So at this point, I think it would be pertinent as we work through the Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority option, if council specifically has any questions that they think are important to work through, both related to Bucks County Sewer and Water and Sewer Authority, but also in terms of the whole exploratory process that's gone through for the past 2 years, that now would be the time to do so.
Okay, so Stephanie, on that, I do have just one question for clarification so we can move on to other council concerns. So now that Aqua and PAWC are removed, the only offer on the table for consideration is a non-privatization offer, correct?
Yes, President Leonard, that is correct. So what you're looking at is Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority, which is just like the Conshohocken Sewer Authority. It is a nonprofit governmental entity.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So Stephanie, I have a question concerning the rates. Bucks County Water System is going to give us estimated rates. They gave us estimated rates for the 10-year period. But how much more would a resident have to pay Bucks County Water System over our current sewer authority in the same 10-year period?
Okay, so through the process, we put together kind of a simple calculation. So Brittany, can you bring up?
You put gold in there. Oh, sorry.
Can we put up a chart? Yeah, can you see that? All right, so Councilmember Flanagan, to answer your question, basically based off of Scott's presentation, right now a borough resident, their monthly bill is approximately $28.20 a month. So over 12 months, that equates to $338.40 annually. So if you look at a 10-year period, each year, if you're paying $338.40, after 10 years, you'll pay $3,384 to the Conshohocken Sewer Authority. So again, a total of $3,384 or $338.40 a year. Now, based off of the numbers that Scott just presented, if you look at Bucks County Water and Sewer over with their $52 million at the 3-year rate freeze. So for the first 3 years in 2022, 2023, 2024, the resident would pay the same amount, the $338.40. And then if you looked at the next 7 years, that monthly cost goes to $47.20. So that actually becomes $566.40. So again, you calculate the costs annually over 10 years, and that equates to $4,980. So you're looking at two totals, basically. You're looking at if the resident pays $3,384 to our current sewer authority, and if you were looking at the Bucks option, they would be paying $4,980 to the sewer authority. So what that equates to and what that really means for this evening in particular is that you're talking about a total out-of-pocket cost to a borough resident of $1,596 total. Again, and that covers 2022 to 2031 if the borough were to accept the Bucks bid.
Thank you, Stephanie. That really clarifies it.
And that's basic. This is basically a model if everything stays the same as is. There could be increases to Conshohocken and or Bucks depending on what is going on, correct?
Exactly.
That is correct. So I guess it's important to note very specifically that for Bucks, these are indicative rates. These are estimates. But that for this evening and for our decision purposes tonight, that's what we have to go off of.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steph.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else on council have a question?
Yes, I do. So based on data that we have from back in 2018, is the infrastructure program was estimated around 28 million. So if we were to fund the program strictly through a tax increase, what will a resident with an assessed home value of $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 have to pay in taxes in excess of what they currently pay in taxes to the borough over that same 10-year period?
All right, so it sounds like what you're asking me, and I know that we did this calculation way back when, but really when we started the process, we were talking about how do we fund the road program? We raise taxes. And so what does that mean to a resident? So, correct?
Right.
All right, so Britt, we have that chart that we used to lay out assessed value for homes. Can you bring that up, please? All right, so council, this is old news to you, but for everyone on the call, this is kind of where the process started. So we were looking at a 28 million, well, I guess let me start with this. Ooh, that's what happens when you're in a green building. All right, so for the residents, the benefit of the residents, keep in mind that when we talk about an assessed value, we aren't talking about what you paid for your home or what your home is worth, but what your home is currently assessed at through the county. And if you have a question on what your assessed value is, your tax bills, your property tax bill provides that information. So just when we're saying assessed, when you're seeing the home assessed value, that's what we're talking about. But on the screen in front of you, you can see again that the total road program was estimated at $28 million. Again, that was back in 2018, so those numbers will look a little different today. The value of 1 mil in the borough of Conshohocken is approximately $670,000. So you do the 28 million divided by the 670,000, you get to 42 total mills. If you spread out those 42 mills over 10 years, what you're really looking at is that you would need to do a 4 mil increase annually. So again, let me break down those numbers. If you are a homeowner and your home is assessed at a value of $100,000, then your current taxes, our current mill, the current taxes you pay to the borough are 4.5 mils. So your home's assessed value, you multiply 100 by 4.5. That means that to the borough on an annual basis, you pay $450. Over 10 years, you'd pay $4,500 to the borough in taxes. If we were looking at funding the road program strictly through a tax increase, we'd have to raise the mills by 4. So, simple math, you take 100, you multiply it by 8.5, that gets you to $850 or $8,500 over 10 years. So what you're really talking about is a $4,000 cost to the borough over a 10-year period. And so then you do the same calculations for an individual with a $200,000 assessed value, and then a $300,000 home assessed value. So again, for a $200,000 assessed home value, you're looking at a cost difference of around $8,000. So if we were to just raise taxes by 4 mils over 10 years, you'd pay an additional $8,000 to the borough of Conshohocken. And then if you're looking at a home assessed value of $300,000 over 10 years with a 4 mil increase, you'd be looking at paying an additional $12,000 to the borough of Conshohocken. So I think that helps to kind of lay out where we started the process in terms of funding options. And then we went from there. So hopefully that information is helpful in terms of laying it out.
Thank you.
Yep.
It is. Thank you,
So,
Steph.
yeah, so Steph, it's clear that from my perspective, we were just presented that a 10-year increase, if we looked at Bucks County over a 10-year period of time, if we went the route of selling the sewer authority, would be a $1,600 increase-ish.
Yep.
But what we're seeing here is if we chose the option of taxes only, not looking at any other grants or anything else, taxes only option would be detrimental to the residents from my perspective. Would that be a correct statement?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, when we did the original calculations, no one really wants to have an extra, I know I don't want an extra $4,000, $8,000, $12,000 cost out of my pocket. So that was, the reason why we kind of kicked off the process, was because it's a significant impact if you're looking at taxes alone.
Correct.
Great, thanks.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Yep.
Hi, Griffin. I got a question, Steph. Is this the reason that the borough engaged in this sale process in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, so this group of elected officials, we've done an assessment of every department and every asset in the borough of Conshohocken. And I think when we did the initial calculation at the start of the process, the tax increase alone was shown to have a significant financial impact on a homeowner. So Borough Council wanted alternatives, and rightfully so. So they engaged in the sale exploration process to explore one additional funding option. Selling to Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority would result in a lesser financial impact to our residents than a tax increase. And I think that council should be commended for doing their due diligence in terms of wanting to understand all of its available options to them.
Okay, thank you, Steph.
So Stephanie, you know, somebody asked about why we did it, which was, I think was Ike. But when we're talking road and infrastructure, could you just make sure everybody understands what is road and infrastructure program, that it's not necessarily just paving roads?
Yeah, so it's paving roads. More importantly, it's rectifying any deficiencies that are underneath the roads. So pipes and utilities and infrastructure, meaning we have some roads that have different levels of different types of subterranean subparticles. So I'm not an expert or an engineer in terms of the actual makeup underneath the road, but it's not just we want the road to look good, it's we want the road to function safely for many years to come. So it's not just the top layer, it's the bottom layers as well.
Right, and a lot of our storm sewer drains are actually in dire need of repair also, Steph?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at around approximately $8 million of stormwater portions of the project that were built into that total $28 million. So it's a significant percentage of the total, what we're calling an infrastructure project.
Right. Thank you.
Stephanie, oh, sorry, Colleen. Stephanie, part of this started when we were developing a long-term plan, looking at all of our debt and our ability as a borough to borrow additional money. So going back to that, we had some roadblocks just with the ability to borrow money. Could you explain that to the residents, that why we were in a quandary, how to handle that?
Yeah, so I think, when the process started, one of the main questions that I got was, well, can't we just borrow additional debt? Can't we just go out and borrow additional money? And the answer to that is it's just not that simple. So, the borough's borrowing capabilities specifically in 2019 were limited, mostly because there was no allocated funding for our current debt service, which was specifically associated with the Borough Hall project. But at the end of 2019, this council rectified that budgetary deficiency and passed a 1 mil tax increase. So that now provides a direct funding source for its outstanding debt. It had a minimal impact on the borough residents, and quite frankly, it positioned the borough to be able to borrow additional capital in the future. I know that Scott pointed out in his presentation that the borough's borrowing capability now, because of the action that this council took, is estimated at around $30 million. So again, just another portion of kind of the thought process and the different steps that went along. It wasn't just we're going to sell the sewer authority, it was we're going to look at all different alternatives and avenues that exist.
Okay, so we looked at the value of the sewer authority asset. We secured our borrowing capability for the future. Are there any other assessments completed over the past 2 years regarding potential funding sources?
Yes, so we also So while we were doing the sale expiration process, the board of directors of the sewer authority, specifically through Janine Riley, approached council and asked them to consider counter proposals to the sale of the municipal system. The board offered options like rent revenue, stormwater management fees, which would provide the borough with additional revenue generating alternatives over the long term as a counter to the one-time profits generated from a sale. So yes, Anita, while this process was going on, there was also an evaluation being done with the current sewer authority board. And I have to commend Janine for reaching out the way that she did.
So then, Steph, with those options that you're talking about, can you tell us a little bit about the sewer authority, our role, and administration exploring those options?
Yeah, well, clearly, we have, we work on the behalf of council. So at the direction of Borough Council, administration was instructed to meet with the sewer authority to discuss the alternatives to the sale. And as I'm sure the authority would agree, those discussions have been amicable and productive. So Borough Council's clear direction to administration was that keeping the authority in the sewer system would remain an option throughout the process. I think that was always on the table, and that borough administration was tasked with finding a way, if possible, or at least for consideration, to retain the authority while still addressing the infrastructure needs of the borough. Does that answer your question, Karen?
It does. It does. Thanks, Steph.
I have a question, Bob Stokely.
Yes, Bob.
Will these options still result in out-of-pocket costs to the borough residents?
The options to our sewer authority?
No.
Yes.
Will these options still result in out-of-pocket costs to the borough residents?
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, so, every option you're looking at, it's going to, there's going to be an increase in some way, shape, or form. So if we're talking about funding the programs proposed by the authority, it's anticipated that sewer rates they'll need to increase. However, and I think it's important that first, unlike a sale that would direct resources to an external entity, these options would result in an investment back into borough-owned assets. And then secondly, the financial impact on a resident to increased sewer fees would be spread out over a longer time period, thus lessening the immediate financial impact to a resident. So two things. Yeah, I mean, though, you have to keep in mind that, you're trying to get creative and innovative here. There's costs associated with that, but it's internal versus external, and it's immediate over stretched out. So just things to keep in mind.
Thank you.
Okay. So Steph, I know this is something that we're still discussing with the sewer authority, but if we were to actually consider the sewer authority counter offer, how would we fund a major road program in the borough at that point?
Good question.
Sorry.
No. So I guess
not taxes.
Yeah. I guess you're going to have to be okay with an infrastructure program that's going to take longer to complete. The project is going to have to be stretched over the course of time as opposed to a potentially designated relatively short time period that an injection of funds from a sale would allow. I guess, though, if you're looking at everything we've talked about tonight, you'd be looking at some sort of combination of smaller incremental tax increases, governmental loans. We have liquid fuels dollars. It's not much. It's about $200,000 a year, but something when you're adding it to a whole pot, it becomes something you factor in. And then, then you have to look at what these revenue generating options are from the sewer authority, which would be stormwater management fees and rent revenue.
Okay.
So I guess, you're just going to have to, the other thing that you have to keep in mind is that we have some problem areas as it relates to our roads and our infrastructure. And I don't think anyone, I know no one on council or within the administration, and I'm sure every resident is aware of the fact that there's some areas that need attention. So if you don't have the influx of dollars, then you're going to have to keep in mind that you'll have to draw upon your capital reserves in case of an emergency. Now,
right, which is one of my concerns.
It's everyone's concern. I think that, if those reserves weren't sufficient to cover the emergency repairs needed, you're looking at residents needing to be prepared for a tax increase in the next fiscal cycle. I think what gives me kind of more of a level of comfort knowing is that this council, through its budget cycle, has really, I guess you could say, fiscally responsibly invested into your reserve funds on an annual basis. So you in every budget cycle designate a chunk of money put into your capital reserve fund. So those reserve funds would, if there was an emergency, would be sufficient to cover anything that posed an immediate health and safety risk to the residents. So it's just a matter of, it's going to take longer. You could be in a situation where you have an emergency where you have to use your reserves. It's just a different way of looking at rolling out an infrastructure program.
Okay. So on that note, I think I would thank council for their diligence the last 4 years in building our capital reserves as one of our main goals and getting that done. So that helps us a lot.
Yeah, we are positioned well financially. We are lucky, especially through COVID and all of the unknowns. I think the way this borough was managed through its elected officials last year in particular, navigating all of the unknowns and the uncertainty. You're here tonight because you have options and decisions you made. Put the options on the table.
Right. Okay. And we have to take into consideration that, we don't even know with all of the building that's going on what some of the new revenues will look like, or when they potentially sell, there's closing costs and influx of dollars. So there are the unknowns, but we have to take into consideration that they would and could become available and earmarked for roads, not just put into reserve or against other funds. We could earmark dollars for road programs as we move forward. Is that not right, Stephanie?
No, that's correct. So you have, if you're looking at, yes, you have real estate property taxes that are going to come in from the new construction. That is a given. In terms of the EIT that's generated from those projects, that's the unknown. So as the projects get complete, you kind of have more of an idea of the stability in terms of who's in those buildings and how they're operating. Then yeah, you'll have a better idea financially of what your overall general fund revenues are on an annual basis. But you could, if there's a surplus, yes, you could take those monies and direct them towards infrastructure.
All right, then given what we know now and where we're positioned, do you think this exploratory process where we went through assessing the value of an asset was useful for the borough to engage in?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was an invaluable process. First and foremost, you now know the value of your sewer system, your sewer authority. You know the value of it. If you need it at any point in time, whether it's now or in the future, a sale of the asset could take place if it's necessary. So you understand the process, and quite frankly, it's just a pivotal resource to have on file for the future. You, depending on decisions that you make, you know how to convey the ordinance. You know how the process for the sale, what that process entails. You know what kind of ballpark value you're looking at. And quite frankly, if you've already removed Aqua and PA American Water from the process, so selling to Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority just makes that process even easier. In terms of the counteroffer from the Sewer Authority, I think that the Sewer Authority will agree that now more than ever, there's greater communication and collaboration between the borough and the Sewer Authority, so that is a positive. The borough now has a much better understanding of one of its major assets, and you've done that with everything. So you've done that Leland Mansion, you've done that with our entire organization, internal organization here, you've done that with your recreation department, you've done it with the police department, you've done it with the fire department, you've done it with public works, now that's public services. You name it, you've done it. So you've positioned yourself strategically for the future through this process, and I think that's what is important. So when we started this, Borough Council asked administration to investigate all alternatives to a significant tax increase like the one I showed you earlier. That investigation with this presentation that Scott just gave, thank you very much, Scott, it's complete. You're looking at basically two options in front of you. You can continue the sale exploration process with Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority, or you can formalize the proposal with your sewer authority, and you now know the pros and cons of kind of each option that's in front of you for consideration. Again, both options have costs and benefits to the residents, but I think from my perspective and from the borough administration perspective, we've presented Borough Council with what I think is a full picture of those costs and benefits in order for you to make a responsible decision of what is in the best interest of the borough.
Thanks.
Thank you, Stefan. I'd really like to thank you and the administration for all of the hard work and time that you have put into this project for us over the last 2 years. I mean, it's been an ongoing process for a long time, and I know that the residents don't understand that. And it has been addressed at meetings throughout the last 2 years. It's not a sudden thing, and I just want to say for council that we really do appreciate the hard work that you have all put in for it.
Agreed.
So it has given us great options. So
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I think we've done a lot of back and forth, and I know a lot of my questions have been answered or asked and answered. I would like to put a motion on the table. I'd like to motion to conclude the sale exploration process and not sell the sewer authority.
I will second that, Anita.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Thank
Okay, so for council, now that we have made that motion and concluded the sale exploration process, I would like to now discuss briefly the memorandum of understanding with the sewer authority so that we have a clear picture of it and the residents have a clear picture and understanding of it. So the sewer authority presented two revenue generating options for council to consider. One consisting of rent revenue and stormwater management fees. This is my understanding of it. These funds could be utilized to pay for the estimated $8 million of infrastructure work required within the overall road program. Stephanie, is my understanding correct?
Yeah, so before I jump to that, can I just clarify for the record that the motion was just made to not sell the sewer authority? Is that correct?
That is correct. That was the motion.
That is correct.
Okay, and that motion was seconded and agreed upon unanimously?
Yes, it was.
Okay, can you re-ask your question, President Leonard? I'm sorry.
Okay, so my question is, the Sewer Authority Board in 2021, this year, has presented us with two revenue generating options for council to consider for rent revenue and stormwater management fees. So we can utilize these funds to pay for the estimated $8 million of infrastructure work required within overall road program. Is that correct?
Yes, that is the overall thought. Yes. So I would say at this point that both entities are working through potential items. An assessment at this point, I would say for tonight, an assessment would need to take place over the next couple of months. But I can tell you that both entities have agreed to genuinely negotiate in good faith. I know that we received a letter dated March 12th, 2021 from the chair of the Sewer Authority Board of Directors, who's Janine Riley, indicating that the Board of Directors unanimously agreed that the authority would like to work with Borough Council to continue to pursue alternatives to the sale. It also expressed their intent to continue these discussions and in the near future enter into a memorandum of understanding with the borough to formalize a new business relationship between the two entities, which would include new operating stipulations in addition to the revenue generating ideas as agreed upon by both entities. I guess it's a fair statement to just say that discussions to date between the borough and the sewer authority have revealed that while there are logistics and legalities to work through, the parties are generally in agreement regarding the content of the memorandum of understanding. And again, you know, I'll have to circle back with them after tonight.
Right.
But it's important, I guess it's important to remember that Borough Council appoints the Sewer Authority board members. And therefore, you know, overall, in terms of just how we operate in general, it's important that our goals are aligned.
Right.
You know, just thinking off the top of my head, the options we're discussing with the Sewer Authority, you know, they'll result in an increased cost experienced by the residents. But like we said before, the residents can rest assured that the increase will be directly reinvested back into the borough. So that's a positive. And again, you know, to start both of those revenue generating potential alternatives, there's going to have to be a conversation, and that's not going to be quick. That's going to take months. It could take 9, 12 months. I don't know. We'll look into it with an emphasis that's focused on establishing a comprehensive program for the future. So I think that answers your question.
It does, yes.
Okay.
So does anyone else on council have any questions? Okay, so Steph, based on the information that we've been provided, I'd like to make a motion to instruct the Borough Administration to finalize the memorandum of understanding with the Sewer Authority Board. That includes working directly with the board to assess the options offered for consideration as an alternative to a potential sale of the sewer system.
So are you basically instructing me to, so you're instructing me to work through the process to finalize the memorandum of understanding with the sewer authority?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Correct.
I understand.
So I would actually need a motion from council for that, I believe.
Yes. So if we're going into some sort of legal and or logistical conversation with the sewer authority, I would need a motion and instruction to do so.
Okay. So do we have a motion from council for that?
I'll make that motion to Tino.
And
I'll
a
second it,
second?
Neva.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, so just a technical aspect of, and Mike, Peter, maybe you can just confirm. So with the sale off the table, are we repealing the ordinance? I guess we have to actually authorize advertisement of repealing the ordinance. Is that correct?
Yeah, great question. So as with any ordinance, you basically follow the same steps that you followed to enact it, to repeal it. So yes, it would be a new ordinance repealing the ordinance that was passed a couple months ago. So all we need this evening for you and I to work through it, it's just a motion to authorize its advertisement. It's not, council's decision has dispensed with the need for it. So it is a simple motion to advertise, and you and I can do everything else.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to authorize the advertisement of the repeal of the ordinance 02-2021.
Carl, before we make that motion, can I just ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
So even with that ordinance in place, the existing sewer board was still sitting in their positions, doing their daily operations, correct?
Yeah, great question, Tina. Yes, that is absolutely correct. So since that ordinance has been passed, the sewer authority has continued to function and fulfill all of its obligations. It was required to under that ordinance that you passed. Yes.
Okay, so really we passed the ordinance to freeze any like capital spending or anything like that, so that when we got the value, if we chose to sell, the value would be an accurate reflection of that snapshot in time and no changes, correct?
Exactly correct. And if there had been some emergency, of course, that's a whole different thing. But general capital improvements were put on hold. Exactly right, Tina.
Okay. All right. Sorry, Cap. Thanks, Carl.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Okay, so I'm sorry, Ike, can you repeat that?
I'll second your motion.
Okay.
Advertisement of the
So for
repeal.
the record, okay, thank you, Ike. So for the record, Colleen Leonard made the motion for the repeal of the ordinance and Ike Griffin second. Do I have all in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. So with that, we'll conclude that section of the Sewer Authority on our agenda and move to our consent agenda if everyone is good and there's no more questions from council.
No.
Okay. So the first item on the consent agenda is approve and adopt the February 3rd and February 17th.
Where'd she go?
I'm not sure. Okay, so the The first motion is to approve and adopt the February 3rd and February 17th regular meeting minutes.
I'll make that motion. Anita Barton?
I'll second it.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. The second item on the agenda is approve the February ending treasurer's report and accounts payable. Do I have a motion from council? So in the amount of $837,490.84.
837.
490.84.
I'll make that motion, Sokolowski.
I'll second that
And
motion. Aye, Griffin.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. So with that, we can go to public comment, and I will start with Mayor Aronson. Can you hear me, Mayor Aronson?
Yes, thank you, President Leonard.
You're welcome.
The Conshohocken Italian Bakery had their 48th anniversary in the borough this past weekend. So Sarah and I stopped by and said hello to Tina. We are thrilled to see them sticking with us for such a long time and coming through the pandemic in strong shape. So congratulations to the, and I encourage everyone to get down there and get some tomato pie before Sarah and I buy it all up. The second thing I have, St. Mark's had their Easter eggs for sale the past couple weeks. It was something unusual because usually volunteers sit there and make them for residents by hand, and they went through a bakery because of COVID, but they're still delicious, and we thank them for continuing this Easter tradition. And then the final thing from me is we have our EAC spring cleanup on April 10th. We're asking everyone to register online. If you go to any of my social media pages or the EAC social media, you'll find that link. It's free to register, and we'll be providing trash bags, gloves, vests, masks, and Public Works will be taking all trash picked up. That's April 10th, 10 a.m. at the Conshohocken VFW. And that's it from me.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Aronson. Mr. Stokely? Okay. Ms. Barton? Are you there, Bob?
Yeah, I have nothing tonight.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Barton?
I just want to say thank you, Stephanie, for all your hard work. And I know the residents will appreciate all of our hard work eventually. It was a tough time, and I'm excited to go forward.
Okay. Welcome. Thank you. Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, as a member of both Borough Council and also the Sewer Authority Board, I want to say I could not have worked with a finer group of people on both boards. Together, all of our hard work, our deliberations, which were not always kind, our massive meetings over and over again, and the negotiations, we came to an ultimate solution. I think it will benefit our town for a long time. So thank you to everyone involved.
Thank you, Jane. Mr. Tino?
I don't have, I think the last weeks, months, for a very long time, I've been consumed with this, so much of what you were saying, Jane. So I'm exhausted to even add anything else tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Tino. Mr. Griffin?
Yeah, I got one thing. I just like all the residents that are listening tonight. When we get back into Borough Hall, I like to see a lot of them at our meetings so they know exactly what's going on from the get-go.
Thank you, Ike. Chief Metz?
I don't have anything to add, President Leonard. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chief Metz. So I would like to say I'm grateful to see so many residents attending our meeting this evening. So while I have such a large audience, I would like to add that our meetings are every month, the first and third Wednesday of the month. The first meeting is always the work session where things are discussed and the public is included and they can ask questions. And then most things will get worked through in a 2-week period and get voted on at the voting meeting. So I would strongly urge that our residents, become a little more involved instead of waiting until you're in a panic mode and really don't have all the facts you need to really decide something. And we also have a lot of committees and boards that need members. So if you would like to be involved or more involved in the borough, go to our website and see if there is anything there that interests you. We're always happy to have involvement from the residents because, like you, all of us on council are just residents. We're residents just serving. That's what we do. None of us are, it's not a political agenda. We're just residents who care like everyone else. So I would like to thank everyone for attending tonight. And we can go to public comment. Brittany, do you have anything?
Thank you, Colleen. Yes, we received 5 written public comments. So the first is from Michael Maycoid, Republican candidate for mayor, 112 West 9th Avenue. Mr. Maycoid writes, esteemed members of Borough Council, at this point you have heard from many concerned residents of Conshohocken, as well as our friends and neighbors in West Conshohocken, White Marsh and Plymouth Township, who would have also been affected by the sale of the sewer system. I wish to add my voice and to go on the record as being strongly opposed to even considering this course of action. Even if I were not running for public office, my opinion as a homeowner in Conshohocken would be the same. Our sewer system should not be privatized. Residents understand that the roads need to be repaired. With interest rates at historic lows, consideration should instead be given toward borrowing the funds needed for this work. Thank you. The second comment is from Claire Wolper, 130 West 9th Avenue. Miss Wolper writes, I'm aware that bids will be presented at the 3/17 Borough Council meeting, so I want to go on the record noting that I am truly concerned about and very much opposed to the potential sale and privatization of our own nonprofit sewer facility, a financial asset of the borough. The sale would have lasting financial implications on the property owners and residents of this town. I have relatives in other townships who have seen their sewer bills creep higher and higher as a result of the sale of their sewer system, and I do not want to experience this here in Conshohocken. With the recent debacle in the Texas power grid at the news, privatization of utilities is clearly not in the best interest of residents and consumers. We residents deserve full transparency from our elected council. Communication well in advance of these issues with context, pros and cons, and the ability to weigh in and be heard on important issues. The third comment is from Lisa Lillick, 804 Forest Street. Ms. Lillick writes, by now, council should have received a petition from the Conshohocken and West Conshohocken residents who are strongly opposed to the sale of Conshohocken sewer system. The petition was forwarded by Food and Water Watch, but I am also attaching a copy. Please read the letter aloud that is attached to the petition. I want to note that this petition was put online just a little over a week ago on March 8th, and has already been signed by 250 residents. Because you, as Borough Council, did not deem it necessary to take the extra steps needed to ensure that residents were informed, volunteers from our borough have taken it upon themselves to canvass the town to let people know. Much of Conshohocken still needs to be covered, but thus far it has become quite evident that very few residents were aware, and I do not believe we found any that were in favor of the sale. I have no doubt that we will be able to secure the number of signatures that we will need on a more formal and more official petition should you decide to proceed with the sale. I'm now going to read aloud the letter that is attached to the petition. Honorable members of the Conshohocken Borough Council, the proposed sale of the Conshohocken Sewer Authority is extremely worrisome to me. Privatizing our public wastewater system will hurt our community. Selling assets to cover budget shortfalls in the short term leaves us desperate in the future. This process that Council is using is entirely centered around the benefits that the sale will bring. I fear that Council has not fully considered the ramifications for our community that would result from this deal. Selling a major asset to pay for short-term budget gaps is poor fiscal management. I understand that these corporations have offered our community millions of dollars, which you hope to use to fund road infrastructure. This is not free money, but should be thought of as a loan that residents will have to repay with interest through hikes in their sewer bills. Due to legislation passed in Harrisburg, these companies will be able to justify rate increases to recoup the money paid to the city. Privatization of our wastewater systems typically leads to skyrocketing rates, decreased quality of service, and loss of transparency and accountability over a service essential for public health. Private companies are beholden first and foremost to their shareholders and have at many points betrayed their promises to elected officials and to the public. Private companies will put their profits ahead of our needs. Please do not sell our sewer system. This is part of Aqua America and PA American Water's attempted takeover of our region's municipal water and wastewater services. Aqua has pitched similar deals to nearby Chester, Plymouth, and Norristown. In Chester, attempts to privatize have been met with an injunction to stop the sale. The Plymouth Council decided against the deal, citing that despite the large upfront sum promised by Aqua, the rate projections showed that the rates would be 2 to 3 times higher than their current rates. They found that it would cost residents less to raise taxes to meet budget shortfalls than it would to sell the sewer system. In Norristown, Aqua walked away from the sale after 2 official petitions demonstrating mass opposition from residents were delivered to the town council.
No.
Pennsylvania American Water has also been aggressively pursuing contracts and just settled with Public Utility Commission on a rate increase. Over the course of the next 2 years, their average customer's wastewater bill will go from $60.42 to $78.41 per month, a nearly 30% increase. I ask that you act in the long-term benefit of the community and reject the sale of our public wastewater system. Sincerely. And then the petition with the 250 signatures is attached. Public comment number 4 is from Jennifer Nelson, 202 West 4th Avenue. Ms. Nelson writes, I'm writing to share my comment on the potential sale of the sewer plant. My name is Jennifer Nelson, a longtime resident and registered voter of Conshohocken. I belong to the 4th Ward, and I must say, this is a first for me. I have never felt the need to speak out until now. I am disgusted to hear, not from the borough who's supposed to inform their community members, but from fellow community members itself, that you are planning to sell the borough's asset, the sewer company. That would be a huge mistake. I'm completely against selling the publicly owned nonprofit sewer plant. Let's remember that a vast majority of our community members are low-income to low to mid-income families. We cannot afford to sell to anyone, let alone a company that is looking to turn a profit versus keeping the money in its own community. Take Texas, for example. We all saw the aftermath of what privately owned utilities can do. They raise the rates to unbearable fees, forcing people out of the community, causing families to lose their homes and go into financial debt. Is that what our borough council members really want? Start putting the community members first and stop thinking about lining your pockets. I believe there are other options out there to resolve the need for repairs. There's numerous grants that could be applied for. You just have to take the time to look. It saddens me to think that our council members, some of you I've known for years, no longer take into account what the community wants or needs, but rather serve your own agendas. stop and think about the community members before making such life-altering decisions. Perhaps you'll earn the respect back from the community you have let down. And the final comment comes from Carrie Baynard, 441 West Elm Street. Ms. Baynard writes, if you decide to explore selling the authority in the future, how will you notify the residents in a timely manner so we are aware of your plans? We had no notice of what was going on this time. Will you agree/promise to mail all residents if this vote comes up again? And that concludes the written public comments that we've received.
Thank you, Brittany.
President Leonard, just also to note for the record that we received numerous emails, not requesting to actually make public comment, but just for the record. So I just want to make sure everyone understands that all constituent emails, concerns, complaints, topics that they sent in were compiled and filed in the topic of the sewer authority with the Borough of Conshohocken. So they're on record.
Okay. Thank you, Stephanie.
Colleen, can I say something else while we're here?
Sure.
All these people were hollering about they weren't informed. Like I said before, come to council meetings, they'll find out.
Correct. Thank you, Ike.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone for public comment?
I have a comment.
Okay, could you state your name and address for the record, please?
Amanda Lillick, 109 Forest Street.
Okay.
I think for me, it's the transparency with what's on the agenda and what's going. And I feel like there's not a lot of information. I have been to borough meetings. I have sat there through the whole thing for things that I'm either interested in or, wanting to hear about. But I feel the issue is, for example, had I known that building was going to be built by my house, I would have been on top of that, like this sewer thing. But it wasn't known to me. And I think part of the problem is that the community at large does not have the knowledge of the borough meetings and things like that and how to get on them. And I think in addition to coming to the meetings, that in the future, they should be done virtually as well to keep people informed if they can't make it to the meeting. Just a suggestion.
And we appreciate that suggestion. I know we normally don't answer on public comment, but I will address that part about doing it virtual also. Back last summer, we tried to do it with council present in the borough building and doing it virtually. And the sound quality was really not good, so that we had to discontinue it. Maybe something that we may be able to fix in the future. But as it is right now, it's probably not possible to do both until that is addressed. And, people know when the council meetings are, and all of the council members are always open, either by email or by phone. If you have questions on a concern or a question about something going on that was on a meeting or anything else, all of us are always more than willing to discuss it with everyone. It's not like we're not.
Sorry, is it a question that maybe there be a newsletter, other than we get that one that gives us recreation things and things like that, that there could be a newsletter that goes out monthly that gives the residents updates to these things?
Now you're talking about another expense.
Right. I mean, it's something that council administration can consider. There's always things to consider. It's not like we're closed to everything. I don't want to continue it as a conversation this evening because there's probably other people also waiting for public comment. But
thank you for listening.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand anything there.
I said it was just a suggestion, and thank you for listening.
We appreciate it. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else for public comment?
Colleen, is it okay if I have a comment?
Yeah, just you can state your name and address for the record.
My name is Felix Ramondo. I live at 232 West 9th Avenue.
Thank you, Felix.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I just wanted to let you, I wanted to first thank you guys, thank you council and administration for all their hard work. I know this is a thankless position many nights, but it is a much needed position to have good people make sure that our borough is running well. For myself, it has been an honor to serve on the authority board since 2009. During my time on the board, I've had the opportunity and the honor to work with many members of our community. And I think our hard work shows. I think we've completed many goals, and I think we've been an outstanding steward of this community asset. And again, it's not feasible to do all this without the hardworking men and women that do the day-to-day operations at the plant. I mean, they're the ones that really have made this community asset a real treasure to have in our authority within our borough. And that goes to having an authority that is financially sound, a treatment plant that is well run, that has 0 to none DEP violations. Our collection system is second to none. We have outstanding ratings for I&I, which is a commendable asset. And doing all this while having really an equitable rate structure and one of the lowest rates in Montgomery County. I mean, out of the 58 municipalities in Montgomery County that have sewer authorities, we rank number 14th. And that's something to be said, considering we have met the needs of capital and really been proactive on addressing many of the issues that our community faces. One, the odor control system that we installed. And I think that has increased the quality of life on all those that live within the authority boundaries, and all those that enjoy the riverfront and the Schuylkill Trail. But I also want to remind everyone that I do agree with the final outcome. I think some of the analysis we may disagree on, but I'll wholeheartedly agree with you on the final decision that council made. And this asset that's part of our community, our residents, the residents of Conshohocken have paid for this. In 1987, they completely rebuilt the sewer plant to handle their urban redevelopment program that Conshohocken has now reaped the benefits from. And we floated a loan just under $20 million, thereabouts, and we paid this off. So I think that's commendable that Conshohocken has, many residents have participated in this and have made this authority a treasure they did not want to separate with, and the value in keeping it. So I just want to thank you for the opportunity to speak, and look forward to working with council on meeting the goals of our community.
Okay, thank you, Felix. Thank you for your comments.
May I have a comment?
Can you state your name and address, please?
Trina, Delaware, 209 East 7th Avenue. I want to thank all of you for your hard work in this situation, and keep up the good work.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate hearing a nice comment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else for public comment?
Yeah, this is Matt Winarski, 356 East 6th Ave. I just wanted to say, obviously I was opposed to the sale. I do appreciate you listening to the concerns of the residents, and I think there was a very valid point made earlier that the community needs to be a lot more involved in the process, and that falls on the community, not on council, that we have not been more involved from the start. I do also believe, however, there could be more transparency So I think we can work together, but I think it's going to start with the community getting involved from the get-go, because that's on us to be aware of what's going on in our backyard. So, but I do appreciate you listening to our concerns and ultimately voting against, and look forward to working together in the future.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else for public comment?
Yeah, this is Jim McCusker from 131 Moore Avenue in West Conshohocken. I'm one of the people that helped set up the COPE website on Facebook, and I want to commend the council for their decision tonight. I'm sure you heard from us and from a lot of people we were informing. I'm a new resident to the area. I moved into the area in December of last year, so I'm very new, but I tend to be active, and I hope that this was helpful. I mean, even the turnout tonight is fantastic. I'm glad. I hope you all look at the positive of that, and I hope that what little we contributed to getting awareness to the community it makes people more aware of the decisions that you have to make on a regular basis, and lets you be informed that, you know, hopefully you understand that the community wasn't truly informed as much as you believe they were. You may have felt they were informed, and maybe rightly so, but let's continue to improve the process of communication and transparency, even for things such as this decision. You've presented information tonight that I couldn't find going online to your site. It may have been there, but perhaps when you have major decisions like this, you could have some mechanism online that where we could store the information, perhaps a wiki, perhaps other technologies that are out there that are easy to use and low cost to the council and to the community. So that's my comment for tonight. Thank you very much. I'm very glad to hear the decision tonight.
Okay, thank you very much for your comment. Is there anyone else that has a public comment? No one else for public comment? Okay, with that, I will say meeting adjourned.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Great job,
St.
everyone.
Patrick's Day.
Good night. Good night.